from the 101 to Sunset. The northbound side is open, but it looks like we are seeing some heavy delays there. As we take a look at this shot, I just wanted to show you this because we are seeing a lot of smoke in the atmosphere. Not the best air quality out there, but here's a look at these winds. So the inland areas show us some offshore flow, and closer to the coast, we're seeing that onshore flow. So some variable winds out there, variable wind speeds as well. That 16 in Van Nuys, 8-mile-an-hour winds in Burbank. Out to the Inland Empire we go, 14-mile-an-hour sustained winds in Riverside, but things have really pulled back from just a couple of hours ago. When we looked at this map, we saw a lot of yellows and reds on the map earlier. We're still seeing a few in and around Santa Clarita and also Thousand Oaks, but really those winds beginning to relax, and that's exactly what we want to see. So as I advance this, and you can see right about 5 o'clock this afternoon, looks like the winds will shift, mostly going to see that onshore push, and those winds will die down. That's good news there. We don't have any warnings out there, wind warnings, but we do have high wind watches to talk about. Gusty Santa Anas, though, still in the forecast, and we're actually going to see those Santa Anas continue to pick up as we head into Tuesday. A big Santa Ana wind event predicted on Tuesday night into Wednesday. For today, we're seeing a lot of 70s out there. We did see some winds into the 45 to 55 mile per hour range earlier, and it's very, very dry out there. We're talking relative humidity levels down in the single-digit range, so that means high fire danger.
Make an impact online fast with our all-in-one control panel. Bluehost, the perfect place to WordPress.
Quality maps, you can see there are some areas with those yellow dots, and that's just an indication that the air quality is not the best. So you want to minimize your exposure to that. Mostly seeing 70s out there. Fullerton at 80 degrees. Lancaster, Palmdale cooler than yesterday, but Van Nuys a little bit warmer than you were yesterday. But look at that relative humidity, 6%. So that's an indication of just how dry it is out there. And it's so dry because of these Santa Ana winds. So these Santa Anas that started to pick up yesterday and continued this morning, they're the cold Santa Ana winds. So that's why temperatures have dropped. We are feeling the effects of that with temperatures much cooler than where we were last week. Last week we were in the 90s. Yesterday we saw that cool down. Today we're continuing to see that cool down. Lots of 70s out there, and we'll continue to see 70s for the most part over the next 7 days. About 77 degrees today, 73 degrees on Tuesday. Remember, we do have another Santa Ana wind event expected Tuesday night into Wednesday. Back to you.
All right, Liberty, thank you. And coming up, scrambling for safety.
LeBron James of the Lakers had bigger things to worry about than basketball after he and his family were forced to evacuate their home as firefighters continue to battle the Getty fire.
And we'll be right back with the latest on the Getty fire.
Here is the latest information we have on the Getty fire that has burned at least 618 acres in the Sepulveda Pass and beyond. At least 8 homes have been destroyed and 5 others damaged. It broke out around 1:30 this morning. Fire crews do not have any containment on it just yet. The cause is unknown, but Mayor Garcetti has ruled out homeless encampment fires, which was previously a concern. Nearly 10,000 homes remain under mandatory evacuation orders. At least 8 of those homes under those evacuation orders have been lost in the fire.
5 others have been damaged, but we are expecting that number to go up later in the day. Aaron Myers has the latest from the ground. Aaron?
Good afternoon, you two. We're here on the 1000 block of Tiger Tail Road. This neighborhood was one of the ones hit very hard, but firefighters did a great job containing the damage too. I spoke with one firefighter who said that he saw about 6 homes in this area that were lost and 2 damaged. This was one of the ones, unfortunately, that is a loss, but firefighters were able to save so many others. And I'm going to bring in Captain Eric Scott with the Los Angeles City Fire Department to fill us in more about this. What kind of conditions were firefighters dealing with when they got out here into the neighborhood?
Extreme conditions due to the wind predominantly. Of course, we did see some increase in temperatures, some low single digits relative humidity, and then those winds that were really pushing. Fortunately, they died off a little bit. But even though you're standing in front of a damaged home, there were thousands. There was actually over 10,000 that we had mandatory evacuated and thousands that were saved. They did an outstanding job.
Did they manage that with the conditions they were facing? Because I mean, you see here, we still have brush around here, we have trees, we had the winds, and they did contain it to just those homes.
Yeah, it was certainly challenging conditions, even these hilly areas with narrow access streets that are coming in and out. But what we did is we immediately called for additional resources very quick. We hit this thing very hard and very fast. Our ground firefighters did an excellent job trying to anchor it and really flank both sides, and we called in additional air support. So we've hit this extremely hard from the air with our fleet of helicopters, LA counties. We also have the two super scoopers here, the Erickson air crane, and fixed wings that were able to drop that retardant in key areas.
Plan for a neighborhood like this right now? I've seen quite a few firefighters. They're going to be out here for some time still.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a while till we're able to repopulate all these areas. Safety is the #1 concern. There's multiple hot spots that are smoldering throughout these areas. There's embers that are still inside some of these homes that have reignited. So it'll take a while to really get this to quell down, and we're working very, very hard because we're expecting more winds coming in on Wednesday.
Talking to us, and keep up the good work. And firefighters, once again, they are out here in this neighborhood. There are a few homes up the street that they are continuously dousing with water. They are keeping an eye on them because they have started to smoke again, smolder, and that is obviously something that they are making sure does not happen with the embers. They don't want it to spread to any of the other homes in this area. That's the very latest here in Brentwood. I'm Erin Myers. I'll send it back to you.
Erin, thank you. And still to come, LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva joins us in studio to talk about the wildfire season, fight, and more.
And we have continuing coverage of the Getty fire.
We are live here on Sepulveda Pass, and in both directions it is closed down. So is southbound 405 because of this fire. And get this, arson investigators looking into a power pole. I'll have that story coming up.
Combating e-cigs, the vaping illness epidemic appears to be leveling off, what health officials are crediting for the steady decline.
And a living miracle. After 5 days in a coma, a 14-week-old baby wakes up and smiles at his dad. It's a picture-perfect moment that is making its rounds on social media.
We are back at 3:30, and this is the scene of the Getty fire burning on the west side near Sunset Boulevard and the 405 freeway. Crews have been at it all day. This fire has burned over 618 acres and is still 0% contained. 8 homes have since been destroyed.
And mandatory evacuations are still in place for thousands of residents. KTLA 5's Jennifer McGraw joins us live now with more. Jen?
Casey and Glenn also creating a traffic nightmare here with Sepulveda Pass closed down. That's because firefighters are working to get a handle on this, but a team of arson investigators are also looking into a power pole behind me. And I can tell you this much, it's charred on either side of that power pole down this hillside and straight back south towards that Tiger Tail, which is the worst destruction that we saw overnight. This fire broke out in the middle of the night, 1:30. Police didn't have time to go door to door and use sirens to alert homeowners. Something was wrong. We know at least 8 homes have been destroyed. Another 5 were damaged. Wind helped fuel this fire straight up the hillside towards the Getty Center. It also prompted thousands of mandatory evacuations. Mount St. Mary's was also evacuated, which is in that same area. And the scary part for many of these people, they were asleep at the time.
I'm like, what's going on? Then I smell something and I'm like, dude, something's burning. And I open my window and all of this smoke comes in and I see outside there's a bunch of fire and I'm like, we gotta get out of here. And I start freaking out. I go up to my parents. I'm like, we gotta leave. We start packing our stuff because we don't know if it's gonna hit our house. And we get up, and then right as we're leaving, there's all these cop cars and they're like, everybody evacuate, everybody evacuate. And there are students from Mount St. Mary's College running down the street. Some of them don't have cars.
I mean, thank goodness many of those people heard those sirens and were able to get out of their house okay. We haven't heard of any injuries at this point. Obviously, a sad situation when this happened in the middle of the night. These people are fleeing from their homes. They tell me that the winds were absolutely atrocious out there and they were blowing so quickly. And it is a fear, especially in that area, not knowing just how quickly firefighters are going to be able to get to their house and if they were even going to have anything to come home to. That woman that I spoke with, she says her friend lives on Tiger Tail and that her camera on her Ring camera actually went out and thought maybe that was it. Maybe it could have been the electricity, but she also didn't know if she lost her home. Back out here, arson investigators have been looking into this power pole all afternoon. They haven't said if this is the exact source of the fire, what perhaps sparked it, but they have cordoned off the area. They have a rope around it. Multiple arson investigators have been out here, so we hope to get a clear picture on what happened and what caused this destructive fire later on in the day. I'll send it back to you guys in Hollywood.
All right, Jennifer McGraw, thank you for that. In Valley Glen, at least one person is in custody after a shootout involving a business owner. It happened this morning near the intersection of Sherman Way and Coldwater Canyon around 8:15 a.m. Police say the business owner was being extorted by an Armenian gang when he was confronted by 4 people in the parking lot while exiting his vehicle. The business owner was armed and exchanged gunfire with the 4 assailants, injuring one in the process. The injured suspect was taken into custody while the 3 other people fled in a newer model white Audi. No word yet on the gang involved with the shooting or their connection with that business owner.
And now at 3, Sheriff Alex Villanueva is joining us live in studio.
Good to see you.
Good to see you both.
Let's start with what's been going on the last 3 weeks, which is all these fires, certainly keeping your department busy, which a lot of people may not realize. But this tick fire, boy, this one the other day was really, really nasty.
Yeah, it was just overnight, just exploded in 4,600 acres, and we ended up with 50,000 people evacuated, and it was a big problem at the worst time of the day.
How does this work with your jurisdiction on that? Because you've got LA, the city of LA, you guys got all that pockets around LA County that that aren't incorporated. So I mean, to me, it would be a little hard to keep track of all that.
Well, we know where the jurisdiction lines are, so our county fire works with LA City Fire. They work very well hand in hand because all of their jurisdictions are right up to each other's. And then that fire, the tick fire, was all of our LA County jurisdiction, where the Saddle Ridge was almost all LA City jurisdiction. And now this fire is the one today, is all LA City jurisdiction, but the voluntary evacuation part is now part of our jurisdiction.
So that's probably very overwhelming to have to try and evacuate
Yeah.
a lot of stubborn people who don't want to leave.
Unfortunately, but if you get the order to evacuate mandatory, please leave. If you don't leave, you just become part of the problem. Because now you have the firefighters and the law enforcement, they're stuck doing rescues when you'd rather have them fighting fires.
Yeah, especially when you've got a situation like today. I mean, all those fires in those little canyons there, that's crazy.
Either way, the vegetation, the inclination of the slopes, when that takes off, there's nothing that's going to stop it. Mother Nature will call a halt when it finally runs out of fuel.
All right, well, move on to another subject. You recently faced some scrutiny for hiring a former homicide detective who was once banned from the Men's Central Jail for passing contraband. Talk about that.
Well, the contraband turned out to be a coffee and a McMuffin.
Oh.
So not really most people's definition of contraband, but it turns out he was employed by the district attorney's office and he was working on a homicide investigation. And I can't give details of the investigation, but that practice is standard protocol when you're trying to gain the rapport of someone who's going to provide information. So I think there was some animosity in the previous administration, and this detective was decorated, very well known nationwide, and he's the reason why we brought him back to our department now.
So basically, he brought in some food from the outside because it's probably better than jail food and probably had a better chance of getting some information if you brought him something.
Exactly.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. That sounds pretty innocent. All right, Halloween just a few days away. Any good tips you want to remind parents?
Yes, make sure your kids are in a group. Make sure there's adult supervision. Make sure they don't crisscross the street. They stay on one side. Make sure they're visible. They have a light source. They have a cell phone, know where they're at all times. Make sure when they're done, look through everything they recovered. Make sure it's edible and it's packaged properly. It's nothing suspicious. And definitely use a buddy system.
This is a good time to put one of those GPS apps on your kid's phone and just track them all night.
Yes. Preferably the smaller they are, make sure there is the adult supervision with them.
in both directions as well. Live in Sky 9 over the Getty fire. Stu Mandel, back to you two in the studio.
All right, Stu, thank you. Fire crews continue to battle the destructive Getty fire. Here is the latest. The Getty fire destroyed at least 8 homes. It damaged at least 5 others. So far, over 600 acres have burned. More than 10,000 people were forced to reopen in the Sepulveda Pass.
Meteorologist Amber Lee is keeping track of the conditions out there for us. Amber, what do you have?
Okay, Juan and Sharon. Well, you know, we talked about this being a cold Santa Ana wind event. So temperatures today stayed below average, but check out our relative humidity, especially where that fire is burning. So we don't have an official reading site exactly where the fire crews are, but this kind of gives you an idea. So Brentwood, you can see relative humidity down to 10%. So because the winds really dried out the atmosphere earlier, we are still slowly trying to recover. As you head over to the other side of the 405 in Bel Air, relative humidity is still pretty low, but not quite as low as the Brentwood area. So you can see winds are light and the wind gusts are not quite as strong as what we saw earlier, but we're starting to see much more of that sea breeze picking up. So that should help as we head into the overnight hours. So we're looking at much more of those winds coming in from the west, and they're starting to get a little bit more breezy right along the coast. So this should help with some of our humidity levels rising as we head into the overnight hours. And here's a look at our gusts. So the gusts, we had the usual wind prone areas looking at very strong gusts going through Santa Clarita, Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks earlier. You can see things have really calmed down. So this is a bit of a break, but we're gearing up for round number 2 coming up as soon as tomorrow night. Back to you.
All right, Amber, thank you. The Getty fire has burned some homes in Brentwood.
KCAL 9's Randy Page live near some of those homes with the very latest. Randy?
Juan, we found a great location. We can show you so much about this fire just from this one spot. To begin with, let me give you your bear.
Get to see. There were only 2 people on the bus at the time, including the driver. The lone passenger suffered minor injuries. 2 cranes
toward Mount St. Mary's College. We spoke to a battalion chief who was there at 2:30 this morning and said you wouldn't believe the power of the fire when it came roaring up there. They were able to stop it though. And then as we look further down the canyon, we can see the structure protection down below. They line up like that, so if there's a spot fire or a problem, they can quickly get to a location they need to get to. And finally, up on the top of the hill, one lone fire engine up there keeping watch on the whole thing to try to make sure that there are no problems that develop. We can also show you from this location the impact of this fire. The impact being the homes that are destroyed, because everything you've been looking at is a part of the view of this home that once stood here in the hills over Brentwood. As we look through the various parts of the home, including the kitchen and most likely the bedrooms. But we also want to show you the outdoors, because you can imagine with a view like this, I'm sure the folks who live here spend a lot of time outside. The swimming pool's got timbers in it, as you can see. Most likely they came from this building, which has a fireplace, as you can see in it. And look at the glass. The glass that clearly once was part of a whole wall of windows, most likely, that was allowed people to stand or sit in the home or even look over the pool and look at the view. Families devastated, memories so impacted by this fire. And there's not just this home, but other homes dotting this area that are in the same position as this. Let's go back to you.
Randy, thanks so much. Well, this fire season is a tough one for firefighters, of course. The multiple fires may be spreading them too thin. In LA County right now, there's the Tick fire up in Santa Clarita. That's been burning since Thursday. And now the Getty fire in the Sepulveda Pass. Well, last Monday, a brush fire broke out near homes in the Pacific Palisades. Firefighters scrambled to put that out before it could do any major damage. And earlier this month, there was the Saddle Ridge fire out in Sylmar. That one torched nearly 9,000 acres and 19 structures were destroyed in the fire. LA firefighters are not departments from all over are offering their help.
There's no place in America that has the mutual aid like we do. And that goes not just between fire departments, but across law enforcement. I watch it, you don't get to see it, but when you have LAPD, LAFD, when you have county fire, our sheriffs, our highway patrol, CAL FIRE, when we do U.S. Forest Service, it's a very seamless thing, and people take their hats off. They're not territorial. They fight this fire like it is their own backyard.
Well, 4 firefighters have been injured in the tick fire. It's burned more than 4,600 acres and is 78% contained. 29 structures have been destroyed there. Well, fire crews in Orange County are on standby and ready to help exhausted crews in other counties. They're also keeping an eye out for any local fires that break out.
And KCAL 9 Orange County reporter Michelle Geely is live in Irvine with details. Michelle.
If there is going to be a critical emergency here in Orange County, but when. And for that reason, the Orange County Fire Authority is